The plane was already falling when the screaming started. Not diving, not spiraling, just sinking. Slow enough to feel hope. Fast enough to feel death. Row 17, left side, window seat. Daniel Mercer felt the engines before he heard them. A vibration shift, a low mechanical cough, then silence. Not full silence. Worse, uneven silence. One engine still alive, the other gone. People don't recognize engine failure immediately. They recognize fear, and fear spreads faster than smoke. The plane jolted, oxygen masks dropped, yellow cups swinging like countdown clocks. A baby started crying, then another. A woman shouted, "What's happening?" Daniel didn't answer. He was already calculating. Former Air Force Flight Systems technician, 8 years maintaining aircraft under pressure. He knew that sound. Single engine, hydraulic instability, and they were over water. He checked the window. Nothing but gray Atlantic beneath them. Clouds too low to see horizon. The captain's voice crackled through speakers. Calm. Too calm. Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a minor technical issue. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Minor. That word. Daniel looked down the aisle. A flight attendant was pale, hands gripping overhead compartments. She knew. This wasn't minor. The plane dipped again. Gasps rippled. Oxygen masks swayed harder. Daniel unbuckled. The man beside him grabbed his arm. "Sit down!" Daniel ignored him. He moved into the aisle, balance shifting with turbulence. The attendant stepped toward him. "Sir, you need to be seated." "How many hydraulics are still active?" he asked. She blinked. "What? Do you have manual override control in the cockpit?" Her face changed. He was speaking the right language. "You need to sit down," she repeated, but softer now. Another violent jolt. Overhead, bins popped open. A laptop crashed onto someone's shoulder. Screams escalated. Daniel moved forward, row by row, gripping seats. The cockpit door was locked. He pounded once, twice. "Open it!" No response. The attendant tried pulling him back. "You can't go in there!" The plane banked sharply. People slid sideways. Someone vomited. A child screamed for her mother. Daniel felt it in his gut. This wasn't controlled descent. This was unstable. He shouted toward the cockpit. "I'm former Air Force maintenance. You've lost left engine and hydraulic B, haven't you?" Silence. Then, the cockpit door cracked open 2 inches. A pilot's eye appeared. Panicked. "How do you know that?" "Because I can hear it," Daniel snapped. "And you're bleeding altitude." The pilot hesitated. Another drop. This time, stronger. The cabin lights flickered. Passengers cried openly now. "Autopilot disengaged!" someone yelled from inside. The pilot looked at Daniel. 1 second of assessment. Desperation met experience. "Get in," the pilot said. The attendant gasped. "You can't." The door shut behind him. Inside the cockpit, chaos, warning alarms, screaming, altitude dropping. 2,800 feet. Too low, too fast. The captain's hands trembled slightly on the controls. "We lost hydraulic pressure B and partial A," the captain said. "Manual reversion isn't responding properly." Translation: controls were sluggish, heavy, unpredictable. Daniel slid into the jump seat. "Where's your nearest diversion?" "Too far," the co-pilot muttered. They were over open water, nearest runway 22 minutes out. They didn't have 22 minutes. The plane shuddered again. Altitude, 2,300 feet. Daniel scanned the panel. Fuel imbalance warning flashing. Left tank feeding unevenly. "Cross-feed," he barked. "We tried." "Try again." The captain flipped switches. Engines roared unevenly. The plane steadied slightly. Not stable, but not dropping as fast. Passengers felt it. The screaming lowered to crying. Hope! Hope is dangerous in crisis because it makes the crash hurt more if it fails. Daniel scanned the radar. Storm cells ahead. If they hit turbulence in this condition, game over. "You need to ditch," he said quietly. The cockpit went still. Ditching meant water landing, in open Atlantic, in unstable hydraulics. Survival rates plummet without full control. "We can make the runway," the captain insisted. "You won't," Daniel replied. Altitude, 1,900 feet. Rate of descent increasing again. The left engine coughed. Not dead, but dying. The co-pilot's voice cracked. "We're not holding pitch," Daniel leaned forward. "If you lose both engines before you align for runway, you'll stall nose first." Silence. 3 men, 3 seconds. One decision. Ditch early under partial control, or gamble for runway and risk catastrophic stall. The captain's jaw tightened. Passengers in the cabin had no idea their fate hung on this exchange. "Prepare cabin for water impact," Daniel said. "You don't make that call," the captain snapped. "No," Daniel agreed. "You do." Altitude, 1,500 feet. The plane jolted again, alarms blaring louder. The captain exhaled. "Cabin crew, prepare for emergency water landing." The words echoed through the speakers. The cabin exploded into panic. Daniel stayed in the jump seat, helping stabilize trim, calling out minor adjustments. "Hold 6 degrees nose up. Ease right rudder. Keep speed just above stall." The water came into view. Gray, endless, cold. Passengers braced. Some prayed, some screamed, some froze. The plane hit hard, not smooth. Left wing clipped first. Violent spin. Cabin tore open midsection. Water rushed in instantly, dark, freezing. The cockpit slammed sideways. Daniel's head struck panel. Stars, blackness, threatening. He forced himself awake, water filling fast. The captain was unconscious, co-pilot bleeding from temple. "Unstrap!" Daniel yelled. He kicked the side window, cracked. Again. It burst outward. Water surged in stronger. He grabbed the co-pilot, forced him toward the opening. The captain regained consciousness, coughing, disoriented. "Out!" Daniel screamed. The cockpit submerged. They surfaced into chaos, screaming, debris floating, parts of fuselage already sinking. Daniel scanned. Life, rafts, deploying unevenly. Passengers in water, some not moving. A mother clung to a floating seat cushion. A teenage boy struggled near the torn fuselage. And then he saw it. A section of the plane breaking apart. And inside it, 2 people trapped, 1 adult woman, 1 child, water rising around them, the metal bending inward. He swam toward them, freezing Atlantic cutting through muscle. The woman screamed. The child was silent. Shock. Daniel reached the opening, metal jagged, barely space for one extraction at a time. The section groaned, sinking, fast. He grabbed the child first, small, light, unresponsive. He pushed the child upward toward a nearby passenger. "Take him!" Then he turned back for the woman. The metal shifted violently, crushed further inward. Pinned her leg. She screamed, "Please!" The section dipped lower. Water reached her chest. Daniel pulled. It didn't move. He tried again. The plane groaned again, this time louder. Someone shouted behind him, "It's going under!" He had seconds. He locked eyes with her. Pure terror, pure plea. He pulled once more. Nothing. The metal buckled. The entire section began to sink. He let go. He kicked backward, swam hard. The fuselage vanished beneath the surface. Her scream cut off by water. Silence. Only waves and survivors gasping. Daniel floated there, chest burning, hands shaking. He had saved the child. He had left the woman. And somewhere inside that freezing ocean, a narrative had just begun. One that would not end in the water. One that would follow him onto land, into court, into headlines. Because 3 days later, a survivor would say something that would fracture the hero's story completely. And Daniel would realize The real crash hadn't happened yet. The ocean didn't feel heroic. It felt cold, violent, unforgiving. Daniel coughed up salt water as rescue helicopters circled overhead. Debris floated everywhere. Seat cushions, luggage, pieces of wing, pieces of lives. The child he had pulled free was coughing now, alive, shaking. A woman held him against her chest inside a half-inflated raft. "That's him!" she cried. "That's the man who saved him!" Voices picked it up instantly. "He went back in! He pulled 2 pilots out! He grabbed the kid!" Hero. The word spreads faster than fuel on water. Daniel didn't feel like one. He felt the woman's hand slipping from his. He felt the metal bending. He felt the moment he stopped pulling. He climbed into a raft last, hands numb, mind racing. Someone was praying out loud. Someone else was sobbing uncontrollably. The Atlantic swallowed the rest of the plane behind them, and with it, the woman he left. 42 survivors, 9 dead. Her name was Rachel Kessler, 39, corporate attorney, traveling alone. The child Daniel saved, Eli Martinez, age 7, separated from his mother during impact. His mother survived. Rachel did not. The media found Daniel before he even dried off. Clips of him pulling the co-pilot onto the raft looped on every major network. Civilian passenger helps pilots land disabled aircraft. Hero technician saves child during crash. His face everywhere. Interviews requested within 48 hours. He declined them all. Because the ocean doesn't leave your body easily. It lingers in your ears, your lungs, your sleep. But someone else didn't decline. On day 3, another survivor went public. Her name was Melissa Grant, row 18, across the aisle from Rachel. She told reporters something small, but explosive. He hesitated. That sentence detonated quietly. "He grabbed the boy first," she said, and Rachel was screaming that she couldn't move her leg. The interviewer leaned forward. "Are you saying he chose the child over her?" Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "I'm saying..." He looked at her, and then he turned. That's all it took. The narrative cracked. Hero, or decision maker. Decision maker. That word feels colder. Within 24 hours, the angle shifted. Did civilian hero make the right call? Ethics at 3,000 feet. Who do you save? Clips slowed down, footage analyzed, body language dissected. Daniel stopped leaving his apartment. He replayed the moment. Over and over. Did he hesitate? Yes, of course he did. It was 2 human beings. But hesitation isn't betrayal. Is it? The NTSB launched a formal investigation. So did the FAA. So did the airline's legal team. Because here's what the public doesn't understand. If a passenger enters the cockpit and influences a pilot's decision, liability shifts quietly, dangerously. And Daniel had done exactly that. He didn't take control, but he advised ditching. The captain confirmed it in his statement. He assessed systems accurately. He recommended early water landing. He assisted in trim control. Those statements protected him, until they didn't. Because Rachel Kessler's family hired attorneys, high-profile ones, and they weren't arguing about the ditching. They were arguing about the water, specifically the extraction. The lawsuit hit 12 weeks after the crash. Wrongful death, gross negligence, reckless rescue prioritization. The accusation wasn't that he failed to save her. It was that he made a discriminatory decision. Child over adult, emotional bias. They framed it carefully. If 2 individuals are trapped, and one is conscious and pleading, and one is unresponsive, what ethical framework governs that choice? Ethical framework. Cold words for freezing water. Daniel sat across from his lawyer the first time he heard the strategy. They're building this around intent, she said. Intent? They're going to argue you prioritized optics. That saving a child looks heroic. Daniel stared at her. That's insane. She didn't disagree. But insanity doesn't matter. Narrative does. He felt sick, because somewhere deep down he knew something worse. When he saw the child, he thought about his niece, 7 years old, same size, same dark hair. That flicker, that recognition. It lasted less than a second, but it existed. Did that influence him? Or was it pure survivability math? The child was smaller, easier to pull, less pinned, less resistance from crushed metal, rational, efficient, correct. But emotion and reason often share the same mask. The trial wasn't criminal. It was civil. Money, liability. But public opinion doesn't differentiate. He became controversial overnight. Half the country defended him. He saved a life. You can't save everyone. Anyone would grab the child. The other half questioned him. He abandoned a conscious woman. She begged. He made a choice. That word again. Choice. Rachel's husband appeared on national television, tired, destroyed, but composed. She was alive, he said quietly. She had a pulse. She was asking for help. He never accused Daniel directly. He didn't need to. Grief does the work. Then came discovery, depositions, sworn statements, hours of questioning. Rachel's attorney leaned forward during Daniel's deposition. When you reached the trap section, who did you see first? The child. And then? Rachel. And what did she say? She said, "Please." Did she ask you to save her? Yes. Did you consider attempting to free her before extracting the child? I did attempt. For how long? Seconds. That answer felt lethal. Seconds? The attorney repeated. The section was sinking. Approximately how many seconds? He didn't know, but it felt like an eternity. Were you aware that Rachel was a triathlete? The attorney asked suddenly. Daniel blinked. What? She had above average lung capacity. She may have survived longer submerged. The room went quiet. Daniel's lawyer objected, but the seed was planted. Maybe. Maybe she could have held breath. Maybe he could have bought time. Maybe. 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 That word is more dangerous than blame. Then something unexpected happened. The cockpit voice recorder transcript was released. Public record. In it, the captain said something during the final 40 seconds before impact. Good call on the ditch. Good call. That phrase dominated headlines for days. It reinforced Daniel's role in the landing, which made the extraction decision even more central. He wasn't just a passenger. He was influential. Power shifts responsibility. And then, 2 weeks before trial, a piece of footage surfaced that no one expected. A passenger's waterproof action camera recovered from debris, time-stamped, 47 seconds of chaos inside the water. The footage ended right before the section sank. But in those seconds, you could hear Rachel's voice clearly, and you could hear Daniel's. And what she said was not what Melissa had told reporters. The courtroom would hear it first, not the media, not the public. And when they did, the hero narrative wouldn't just crack, it would invert. The courtroom was colder than the ocean, not in temperature, in precision. Everything here was deliberate, measured, filtered, no screaming wind, no rushing water, just language. And language can drown you slower. Daniel sat at the defense table, suit pressed, hands still. Across from him sat Rachel Kessler's family, her husband, Aaron, her sister, her parents. 9 seats filled with grief. The jury watched everyone. That's how civil trials work. They don't just examine facts, they examine faces. The plaintiff's attorney stood first, measured tone, controlled pace. This case is not about heroism, she began. It is about obligation. The word landed carefully. Mr. Mercer entered the cockpit, influenced a landing decision, assisted in the rescue, and then, when faced with two trapped individuals, he made a choice. She didn't say abandoned. She didn't say sacrificed. She said choice. Rachel Kessler was conscious, responsive, pleading for help, and Mr. Mercer extracted a different passenger first. And the jury wrote that down. Extracted a different passenger, clinical, cold, accusation wrapped in professionalism. Daniel stared forward. His lawyer didn't object, because it wasn't technically wrong. The defense stood next. "This case is about chaos," she said calmly. "It is about seconds, freezing water, structural collapse, and a civilian who risked his own life multiple times." She turned slightly toward the jury. "You cannot hold someone liable for not performing a miracle." The judge nodded subtly. The tone was set. Then the footage was introduced. The action camera, recovered from debris, time-stamped, unedited. The lights dimmed, the screen flickered. Grainy water-splashed chaos filled the courtroom, screaming, metal bending, waves slamming. The jury leaned forward. You could see Daniel swimming toward the torn fuselage. You could hear Rachel's voice, clearer than anyone expected. "Help me! I'm stuck!" The video shook violently. Water splashed over lens. Daniel's voice came through. "I've got you!" Then, something that hadn't been mentioned in any deposition. Rachel said, "The kid can swim." The courtroom froze. The plaintiff's attorney stiffened. The video replayed. Slower. Enhanced audio. Rachel's voice again. "The kid can swim. Help me first." Silence expanded like pressure in deep water. The jury turned toward Daniel. Because this changed everything. Not just what happened, but what people believed happened. Melissa Grant's earlier interview echoed in contrast. He looked at her, and then he turned. But now, the woman wasn't telling him to save the child. She was telling him not to. The plaintiff's attorney rose immediately. "Your Honor, context." The judge held up a hand. "We will allow cross-examination." The footage continued. You could see Daniel pull the child first, then turn back, then struggle with metal, then the section dip violently. Rachel's scream cut short. End of clip. Lights came back on. The room felt different, heavier, but sharper. The plaintiff's attorney recovered quickly. She approached Daniel on the stand. "Mr. Mercer, did you hear Rachel say that?" "No." "You're certain?" There was screaming, water. "I heard help me." "Are you saying the footage is inaccurate?" "No." "So you're saying you didn't hear her tell you to help her first?" "That's correct." The attorney paced. "But you heard her say please?" "Yes." "And you still chose the child?" The word again. Chose. "Yes." "Why?" "Because that was the moment, the fulcrum, the truth Daniel hadn't fully faced. I believed the child was easier to extract quickly," he said carefully. "So it was about efficiency." "Yes." "Not emotion?" The courtroom leaned in. "Not optics?" "No." "Not because he was a child?" Daniel paused, and that pause was dangerous. "Partially because he was smaller," he admitted. There it was, human, not perfect. Human. The plaintiff seized it. So size mattered. In terms of speed, yes. And you assessed that in seconds. Yes. Without knowing how long Rachel could survive. Yes. The attorney turned toward the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, that is the definition of assumption." She sat down. The air shifted back, not fully against him, but no longer fully with him. The defense called the co-pilot. He testified that the fuselage section was visibly sinking. That area would have fully submerged in under 10 seconds. They called a marine structural expert. He demonstrated how the metal was bending inward under pressure. Extraction of an adult pinned at the leg would likely have required tools. Tools Daniel didn't have. Then the defense did something unexpected. They called Eli's mother, the boy Daniel saved. She walked to the stand. Steady, composed. She didn't look at Daniel at first. She looked at the jury. "My son doesn't remember much," she said softly. "But I remember seeing him come up out of the water in that man's arms," she swallowed. "If he'd gone back for Rachel first, my son would have drowned." The plaintiff objected. Speculation. The judge allowed it as emotional testimony. The mother continued, "I'm not here to diminish Rachel's life, but my son's life matters too." That sentence hung in the air. Because that's the part people avoid saying out loud. Lives compete in crisis. You don't get both, you get one. And that is unbearable. Then came the twist no one expected. The defense attorney approached the bench, requested to introduce one final piece of evidence. A toxicology report. Not of Daniel, of Rachel. The courtroom murmured. The judge reviewed it, allowed it. The report showed elevated levels of benzodiazepines in Rachel's system, prescribed medication, anti-anxiety, nothing illegal, but enough to potentially impair reaction time in cold shock. The defense attorney addressed the jury. Cold water shock survival is heavily dependent on immediate response and breath control. She held up the report. These levels may have reduced her ability to regulate breathing once submerged. The plaintiff stood instantly. Objection. That is speculative and irrelevant to Mr. Mercer's decision. The judge narrowed his eyes. Sustained in part. The jury will consider this only in relation to survivability context. But the damage was done. The narrative fractured again. Not because Rachel did anything wrong, but because survival math is brutal. Variables stack, seconds multiply, outcomes narrow. The trial recessed for the day. Daniel walked out into the hallway. Reporters shouted questions. "Do you regret your decision? Would you choose differently now?" He didn't answer, because regret and reality are not the same thing. But that night, alone, he replayed the footage again, and he heard it clearly. The kid can swim. Why would she say that? Why would she assume that? The boy was unconscious, silent. She couldn't see him clearly, unless she had seen something. He hadn't, and that thought opened a door. Because if Rachel believed the child could swim, that meant she believed something about him, something that wasn't true. And if she believed something false, who told her? Or what had Daniel said in those seconds before the camera picked up audio? His stomach dropped, because there was something else in that footage. A half second before he grabbed the child, a phrase he hadn't remembered until now. And if the enhanced audio caught it, the courtroom would hear it next. And when they did, the deception wouldn't be about Rachel. It would be about him. The courtroom was fuller the next morning. Word had spread. Not about the toxicology, not about the child, about the audio. Because overnight, the defense team had filed a motion to admit enhanced cockpit-to-cabin synchronization audio. The action camera had captured water-level sound, but the cockpit voice recorder captured something else. 32 seconds before water impact, a faint transmission over the internal cabin intercom. Daniel didn't remember touching it, didn't remember speaking through it. But stress does strange things. The judge allowed the playback. Limited scope. Context only. The lights dimmed again. The screen split in two. Left, cockpit footage timeline. Right, enhanced cabin audio waveform. You could hear alarms. You could hear the captain breathing hard. And then, Daniel's voice, distorted, urgent. Brace for impact. If you can swim, head to the nearest exit and inflate outside. The courtroom went still. The defense attorney closed her eyes briefly. Daniel felt his chest hollow out. The audio replayed. Clearer. If you can swim? Those 4 words. Rachel had been in row 18. She would have heard it. And when she later said, "The kid can swim?" She wasn't guessing. She was responding. To him. The plaintiff's attorney stood slowly, approached Daniel. "Mr. Mercer? Did you make that announcement?" Daniel swallowed. "I don't remember." "But that is your voice." "Yes." "So you told passengers to head to the nearest exit if they could swim?" "Yes." "And you are aware that children under 10 often participate in swim instruction programs?" "Yes." "And you are aware that such a statement could create assumptions about a child's survivability in water?" "Objection." "Argumentative. Overruled," Daniel answered quietly. "I was trying to prevent panic." "But you may have inadvertently created a belief," the attorney pressed, "that some individuals were capable of self-rescue." Silence. Because that was the pivot. He didn't just choose the child first. He had primed the environment. He had suggested survivability based on swimming ability. And Rachel had heard it. "The kid can swim." That wasn't random. It was logic. Her logic. Based on his instruction. The plaintiff's attorney leaned closer. "So when Rachel told you to help her first, she was referencing your own announcement?" Daniel felt the weight settle fully now. "Yes. And you did not clarify." "There was no time." "You did not attempt to verify the child's condition." "He was unresponsive." "So he could not confirm whether he could swim?" "No." "So you made an assumption?" "No," Daniel said more firmly now. "I made a speed calculation." The attorney nodded slowly. "Influenced by your own prior statement." The room shifted. This wasn't about optics anymore. It was about causation. Did his words contribute to Rachel's belief? Did that belief alter her plea? And did that plea affect the moral clarity of his decision? This is how civil cases work. They don't need malice. They need chain reaction. The defense rose for redirect. "Mr. Mercer, when you said, 'if you can swim,' what did you intend?" "To direct capable individuals toward exits without trampling others." "Did you intend to imply that swimming guaranteed survival?" "No." "Were you aware the child was unconscious?" "Yes." "Did you assess that an unconscious child cannot swim?" "Yes." "So Rachel's statement was factually incorrect?" "Yes." "And did that change your extraction priority?" "No." Because here is the brutal truth. Even if she hadn't said it, he still would have grabbed the child first. The plaintiff's attorney saw that too. That's why her final move was surgical. She approached the jury box slowly. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is not about villainy." She paused. "It is about responsibility for ripple effects." She turned toward Daniel. "Mr. Mercer stepped into authority that day. He entered the cockpit. He made announcements. He influenced decisions." She faced the jury again. "And when you assume authority, you assume consequence." Silence, heavy, precise. Daniel's lawyer stood for closing. "Authority is not ownership of fate," she said evenly. "He did not cause the engine failure. He did not tear the fuselage. He did not pin Rachel's leg." She stepped closer to the jury. "He made decisions under seconds of collapsing structure." A breath. "And if you punish civilians for stepping forward in crisis, next time, no one will." That landed. Because society depends on that line. The thin line between action and liability. The jury deliberated for 2 days. 2 full days of dissecting 14 seconds. 2 days of replaying "if you can swim." 2 days of arguing about child versus adult. 2 days of reconstructing cold water physics. Daniel didn't sleep. Because for the first time, he wasn't questioning whether he did the right thing. He was questioning whether stepping forward at all was a mistake. And that thought was darker than guilt. Because if stepping up leads to ruin, what happens next time? Someone hesitates. The jury returned late afternoon. The courtroom stood. The foreperson held the verdict. On the count of wrongful death, not liable. A breath released across the room, but not relief. Because civil acquittal doesn't erase narrative, it just ends litigation. Rachel's husband didn't react. He sat still, eyes fixed on nothing. Daniel wanted to approach him, but there are distances that verdicts don't close. Outside, reporters surged. "Do you feel vindicated? Would you do it again?" He answered one question, just one. "I would still try." That line went viral. Half the internet praised him, half called it arrogance. And then, 2 weeks later, a marine salvage diver surfaced with something else from the wreckage. Something lodged inside the torn fuselage section. A waterproof fitness tracker, belonging to Rachel. It recorded biometric data, heart rate, motion, time of submersion. And when the data was analyzed, it revealed something no one had calculated correctly. Rachel's heart didn't stop when the fuselage sank. It continued for almost 90 seconds underwater. The number that haunted the courtroom wasn't 14 anymore. It was 90. 90 seconds. That's how long Rachel Kessler's heart continued beating after the fuselage disappeared beneath the Atlantic. The fitness tracker data was precise, time-stamped, biometric, impact, water entry, rapid heart rate spike, cold shock response. Then, sustained elevated pulse for 1 minute and 32 seconds. Not 15, not 10, not instant, 90 seconds. When the report was released, the media didn't hesitate. Victim survived longer than thought. Did rescue decision cost crucial seconds? New data reopens moral debate. The lawsuit was over, but the narrative wasn't. Daniel stared at the data printout on his kitchen table, graph lines rising and falling, a heart refusing to stop. 90 seconds. Could he have gone back? Could he have dove under? Could he have tried again? Memory fought with physics. The fuselage section had sunk fast, but once submerged, it didn't vanish into nothing. It settled somewhere below. The water temperature that day, 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold shock incapacitates most adults in under 60 seconds, but Rachel had been athletic, high lung capacity, strong cardiovascular system, 90 seconds. That meant she didn't immediately inhale water. She fought. That realization changed something, not legally, emotionally. Because before, the story ended when the metal vanished. Now, it stretched beyond it. The investigators reconstructed likely conditions. The fuselage would have sunk approximately 12 to 15 feet below surface before buoyancy shift. In theory, a trained diver could have attempted re-entry within that 90-second window. Daniel wasn't a trained diver. He was hypoxic, in shock, bleeding from the head. But the human brain doesn't argue with nuance at 3 a.m. It asks one question. Why didn't you try? He remembered the cold, stealing breath, the salt burning his throat, the waves slamming debris into his back. He remembered grabbing air, grabbing the raft, grabbing survival, and somewhere between saving and surviving. He stopped being a rescuer. He became a survivor. That line is thin and brutal. Rachel's husband released a statement after the biometric data became public, measured, controlled. He didn't demand another trial. He didn't accuse Daniel again. He said one sentence that cut deeper than litigation ever had. She fought. That was it. 3 words. No blame, no lawsuit, just fact. She fought. The public debate ignited again. Some argued the 90 seconds proved nothing. Others said it proved everything. Because if she was alive underwater, the possibility of another attempt existed. The possibility, that word returned. Maybe, maybe, maybe. Daniel requested the full dive report from the salvage team. He read every detail. The depth, the debris spread, the current flow that day. One line stood out. Visibility underwater estimated at less than 2 feet. Black water. Metal fragments, fuel residue, zero orientation. Even trained divers hesitated in those conditions, but hesitation had never been the issue. Choice was. He met with a marine survival expert privately. No media, no lawyers, just facts. If you had gone under immediately, the expert said calmly, you likely would have had one breath. One? Yes, cold shock, hyperventilation response. You would not have had lung control. And the depth? 12 feet is manageable in a pool, not in wreckage, not with shifting metal. And 90 seconds? The expert leaned back. Biometric heart activity does not equal conscious survivability. Daniel closed his eyes. But she was alive. Yes. And I didn't go back. Silence. Because sometimes survival means accepting that not every fight can be entered. Months passed. The media cycle eventually moved on. Another crisis, another debate, another viral story. But the 90 seconds stayed with him. He began volunteering with open water rescue training programs, not as a hero, as a student, learning breath control, learning hypothermia response, learning underwater orientation, not to rewrite history, to honor it. At one training session, the instructor simulated entrapment drills in low visibility tanks. Daniel submerged. Darkness absolute. Metal frames placed around him. Simulated debris. He had 60 seconds to locate and extract a weighted mannequin. At 45 seconds, panic clawed at his chest. His body demanded air. His hands shook. He surfaced early, gasping. The instructor looked at him. Cold water isn't forgiving, she said. No, Daniel replied quietly. It isn't. 2 years after the crash, he requested a meeting with Aaron Kessler, Rachel's husband. No cameras, no press, just a quiet office overlooking a harbor. Aaron looked older. Grief ages people unevenly. They sat across from each other. No hostility, no warmth, just history. I read the dive reports, Daniel began. Aaron nodded. I did too. Silence. She was alive, Aaron said finally. Yes. And you didn't go back. Daniel didn't defend. I didn't. Another silence, longer. Aaron's hands were steady now. I don't think you could have saved her. The words surprised Daniel. I don't, Aaron repeated. But knowing she fought, I needed to know that. Daniel swallowed. I'm sorry. Aaron nodded once. I know. Not forgiveness, not absolution, understanding. Sometimes that's enough. Years passed. Eli, the child Daniel saved, grew into a teenager, then an adult. He reached out at 21, requested to meet. They met near the coast. Eli was taller than Daniel remembered, stronger, alive. I saw the biometric report, Eli said. Daniel's chest tightened. I know. Eli looked out at the water. Do you regret saving me first? The question cut clean. No. Eli nodded slowly. Good. A pause. My mom told me something after. She said survival is math under pressure. Daniel almost smiled. Your mom's right, Eli continued. If you had gone back and drowned, there would have been 2 funerals. Another quiet truth. Numbers matter, even when emotions scream louder. On the 10th anniversary of the crash, a memorial was held near the coast, names engraved, flowers placed, Rachel's name among them. Daniel stood at the edge of the gathering, not central, not spotlighted, just present. A speaker read the names of the 9 lost. When Rachel's name was spoken, a wind moved across the water. Subtle, unremarkable. But Daniel felt it. 14 seconds, 90 seconds, a lifetime measured between them. After the ceremony, he walked alone toward the shoreline. The Atlantic was calm that day, deceptively peaceful. He stood there long enough for memory to soften, not disappear, soften. Here is the truth that remained after trials, footage, biometrics, and debate. He did not cause the crash. He did not intend harm. He did not abandon lightly. He chose under collapse, and then he survived. Survival is not always noble. Sometimes it's just necessary, and necessity rarely feels clean. The story ends not with a verdict, not with vindication, but with a question that refuses to disappear. If you are given seconds and 2 lives and freezing water and chaos, do you attempt the impossible twice, or do you secure the possible once? There is no answer that saves everyone. There is only the answer you can live with afterward. 14 seconds made him act. 90 seconds made him reflect. But the rest of his life, that's where the real decision lived. And one day, when your moment comes, when metal bends, when water rises, when someone screams your name, you won't have time for philosophy. You'll have breath and instinct and one choice. When it's over, will you survive it, or will it survive you?